There are moments in life that defy explanation. Silent thresholds we cross, alone and uncertain. When the outer world continues as normal, but something inside us begins to unravel. It doesn't always look like crisis. Sometimes it looks like waking up and realizing you no longer recognize your own reflection. Sometimes it's the sudden weight of exhaustion that no sleep can cure. Other times it's the ache of feeling utterly alone, even in a room full of people. These are not failures. These are signs, invitations. Carl Jung believed that the soul speaks in symbols, in dreams, in subtle disturbances that ripple through our daily lives. And when we ignore those signs, they return louder. Through illness, despair, anxiety, disconnection. He did not see these as pathologies to be eradicated, but as messages from the unconscious, parts of us long silenced, now demanding to be heard. This journey is not about self-improvement. It is about self-remembrance. It is not about fixing what's broken, but unearthing what was buried. Beneath the masks we wear, the roles we play, the expectations we internalize, there is something ancient and unshakable waiting to emerge, something sacred, something true. There comes a time when you wake up, look in the mirror, and no longer recognize the person staring back. Your reflection is familiar, yet something vital has faded. It's not the lines on your face or the tiredness in your eyes. It's deeper. You've become a stranger to yourself, molded by years of compromises, obligations, and the subtle pressure to keep it all together. You wonder, when did I stop being me? Jung believed that the greatest tragedy is not that we age, but that we forget who we truly are. The process of growing up often demands that we cut off parts of ourselves just to fit in. Our playfulness, our defiance, our dreams. We trade authenticity for acceptance, believing that survival depends on being agreeable, normal, digestible. Over time, those fragments we exile become the roots of our inner emptiness. You go through the motions, career, relationships, responsibilities. Yet underneath it all, there's a gnawing sense that something is missing. You laugh, but the joy feels distant. You succeed, but the victory tastes hollow. Because the life you've built, impressive as it may be, no longer fits the contours of your soul, and no one can see it, because you've learned to perform happiness. The outer world applauds your composure, your resilience, your sacrifice. But the inner world cries out for reunion with the wild, tender, imaginative self you once knew. Jung called this the path of individuation, the long journey back to the self after we've spent years wandering in personas. It's not an easy road. It requires you to question every role you've inherited, every belief you swallowed just to belong. Often, it starts with a breakdown, a moment where the old identity begins to crack. You may find yourself withdrawing from people who once mattered. You may quit a job that once defined you, not because you're impulsive, but because your soul is finally resisting its own erasure. It's terrifying, but it's also sacred. It means something real is trying to be born. You might grieve the person you pretended to be because they kept you safe, but safety is not the same as wholeness. Safety is a cage with golden bars. Wholeness is the wild terrain of the soul, where freedom breathes. To find yourself again, you must be willing to disappoint the world and meet the forgotten parts of you waiting in the dark. Those parts are not lost. They're just buried beneath years of conditioning. The artist you silenced, the child you shamed, the truth you ignored. They are waiting, patiently, for you to turn inward and listen. And when you do, you'll start to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. So if you find yourself feeling like a stranger in your own life, know this: it's not the end. It's the beginning of a return. A quiet revolution, a soul reclaiming its name. And though the road is uncertain, it leads home. There's a loneliness that cuts deeper than isolation. It's the kind that stays with you even when you're surrounded by people, laughter, and noise. You smile, you participate, you nod along, but inside, there's a silence no one can hear. A sense of being unseen, unknown, untouched. It's the ache of being alone in your own skin. You begin to wonder if something is wrong with you. Why can't you feel what others seem to feel? Why does small talk exhaust you? And why does your soul long for conversations that rarely happen? But this isn't a flaw. It's a calling. A signal from your deeper self that you're starving for something real. We live in a world obsessed with image, speed, and surface. But you are someone who craves depth, silence, meaning. And when that need goes unmet, your spirit begins to shrink. The loneliness you feel isn't just emotional. It's existential. It's the soul whispering, I was meant for something more. You may find yourself retreating, not out of bitterness, but out of self-preservation. The world calls it antisocial, but you would call it sacred withdrawal. The psyche often pulls away when the outer world no longer reflects the inner truth. It's not depression, it's gestation. Something is forming in the dark. In this space, you begin to sift through your life. Who makes you feel alive, and who just fills the silence? What parts of you are being hidden to keep the peace? The answers are often painful, but necessary, because the soul does not lie, withdraws until truth is restored. And then, slowly, the loneliness begins to shift. You find solace not in crowds, but in authenticity, in late-night thoughts, in books that stir your spirit, in music that understands you. You begin to realize your loneliness was never emptiness, it's absence of yourself. True belonging begins when you belong to yourself, when you stop diluting your truth for company, when you embrace solitude, not as punishment, but as a path to wholeness. And from that place, you'll draw on souls who see you, not just your smile, but your essence. So if the crowd makes you lonelier, step away, not in bitterness, but in reverence. The soul does not thrive in noise. It thrives in truth. There's a disorienting moment when you realize the life you once begged the universe for no longer fits you. You got the job, the relationship, the house, the recognition, though something feels off. Not wrong, just hollow. And you can't understand why. Because this was the dream. This was supposed to be enough. Jung would say, the ego achieved its goal. You see, we often pursue dreams shaped by our wounded selves, dreams rooted in a need to prove our worth, to feel loved, to finally be seen. And when those needs are met externally, we expect fulfillment. But fulfillment doesn't come from achievement, it comes from alignment. So you start to feel restless. You wake up with a sense of dread, not because anything is falling apart, but because nothing is truly alive. You try to force gratitude to remind yourself how lucky you are. But gratitude cannot override the soul's call to evolve. You can't pray your way back into a dream you've outgrown. It's terrifying. This realization, because it forces you to confront the possibility that you've built a life on old versions of yourself, that your current reality is a reflection of who you were, not who you are becoming. And to grow, you may have to let go of things that once felt sacred. People around you may not understand. They'll say, you should be happy. And part of you agrees. But deeper still, another voice says, this chapter is done. And that voice, though quiet, is honest. It doesn't seek comfort. It seeks truth. Jung believed that when we deny the call to evolve, we invite neurosis. The anxiety, the fatigue, the numbness. They're not flaws. They're signals. They're the soul's way of saying, this life no longer holds who I am. The longer you stay, the heavier it becomes. Eventually, you'll reach a crossroads. Cling to comfort or leap into the unknown. And though the unknown feels dangerous, it's where your next self lives. The version of you who no longer needs applause, who creates from joy, not fear, who knows that peace is not the absence of desire, but the presence of purpose. So if you find yourself feeling guilty for outgrowing the life you once prayed for, don't. That prayer brought you here. It was never meant to be the destination, only a doorway. Now, it's time to walk through. There's a kind of exhaustion that no amount of sleep can fix. You wake up tired, go through the day drained, and collapse into bed only to do it all over again. But this isn't about sleep. It's soul-deep fatigue, the kind that comes from carrying too much, too long, too silently. You begin to wonder, why am I always so tired? But the answer doesn't lie in caffeine or naps. It lies in the life you're living, in the spaces where you say yes, out of obligation, where you smile to keep the peace, where you stay quiet to avoid conflict. Each of these moments may seem small, but they accumulate. They wear you down. Jung spoke of psychic energy, the vitality of the soul, and when you live out of alignment with your truth, that energy begins to leak. You're not just tired because you've done too much. You're tired because you've abandoned yourself in the process. You're tired of the mask, the roles, the pretending. This kind of fatigue is a spiritual message. It's the psyche saying, I can't carry this anymore. But instead of listening, we push harder. We become masters of coping, overworking, overthinking, overgiving, all just to avoid the truth that the life we're living, eventually the body speaks what the soul has long been whispering. You get sick, you break down, you lose motivation, but this is not failure. This is a moment where the body and soul unite in protest. They are begging you to stop, to rest, to return. And not just physical rest, but emotional rest, psychological rest. The rest that comes from not performing, from saying no without guilt, from letting the dishes wait and the texts go unanswered, from being, not doing. This rest isn't laziness. It's you choosing life over performance, truth over image, wholeness over hustle. It's remembering that you are not a machine. You are a soul in a body, and both deserve gentleness. So, if you're tired but sleep isn't helping, where have you silenced your no? That exhaustion is not a flaw. It's a map. Follow it, and it will lead you back to yourself. There's a silent weight that grows on your shoulders every time you say yes, when your soul is whispering no. It's the burden of emotional overcommitment, a quiet self-betrayal that seems noble on the surface, but erodes your spirit from within. You listen, you help, you give, you offer pieces of your energy to anyone who asks, until eventually you realize there's nothing left for you. And what's worse, no one notices, because you've made exhaustion look normal. Carl Jung warned that the more we deny our own needs for the sake of pleasing others, the further we drift from the self. This is not about selfishness. It is about sacred preservation. There is nothing holy about being emotionally available to everyone while silently drowning inside. Every "I'm fine" you mutter when you're not. Every smile you wear to make others comfortable. It all adds weight to the invisible burden you carry. You think your availability makes you kind, generous, or good. But often, it's a strategy, an unconscious way of seeking validation. You think, if I'm always there for them, they won't leave. They'll see I'm worthy. But it doesn't work that way. The more you give without boundaries, the more invisible you become. Because people stop seeing your heart and start seeing your function. Overcommitment begins to strip you of clarity. You start forgetting what you actually want because you're too busy meeting everyone else's needs. And slowly, the mask of helpfulness fuses with your face. Jung called this the persona, the part of you that adapts to social roles. But when the persona becomes your identity, your true self retreats into the shadows, starved and silenced. It's in this state of depletion that resentment grows. You start to hate the people you once loved, not because they've changed, but because you've erased yourself to accommodate them. You agreed to things you didn't want, smiled when you should have screamed, and now you're bitter. And that bitterness isn't their fault. It's the result of you betraying your own boundaries. The healing begins when you say, enough. When you begin to recognize that your energy is sacred, finite, and deeply personal. Not everyone deserves access to it. You were not born to be everyone's healer, therapist, or savior. You were born to live your truth. And sometimes, living that truth means disappointing others. Let them be disappointed. Your peace is worth more than their approval. Once you stop overcommitting emotionally, you begin to see who truly values you and who only valued your usefulness. Some people will drift away. Let them. What remains will be more honest, more reciprocal. You'll finally create space to hear your own voice, and in that space, your essence will begin to reemerge, like spring after a long, hard winter. So ask yourself, when was the last time you chose yourself, even if it meant letting someone down? When did you last say no and feel the quiet relief in your body? That relief, that is your soul thanking you. There is a peculiar prison made entirely of words. It's built from your need to explain yourself, to justify your silence, your decisions, your boundaries. Every time you say, I'm sorry, but, or, I hope you understand, you're offering another brick to the wall that separates you from your own power. You believe your peace must be earned through explanation. But what if I told you it doesn't? Jung taught that individuation is about becoming whole, not palatable. But when you constantly explain yourself, you are still trying to be understood through the lens of others. You are shaping your truth to fit someone else's expectations, and slowly you lose yourself. The more you explain, the more you seek permission for simply existing the way you are. The need to explain is often rooted in fear. Fear of being seen as rude, cold, arrogant, or selfish. But those are the projections of others, not truths about you. Jung said that projections are lies the psyche tells to avoid facing its own darkness. So when someone demands an explanation for your boundary, what they're really resisting is the reflection of their own entitlement. There is immense power in choosing to say less, in letting your no be complete without an accompanying essay, in walking away without a closing argument. At first, it will feel uncomfortable, even cruel, but discomfort is the birth pang of transformation. You are not here to be legible to everyone. You are here to be whole, even if that means being misunderstood. You'll find that when you stop explaining, the people who truly care will lean in with curiosity, not accusations. They will respect your silence as much as your words. But those who only sought control will become agitated. They thrived on your justifications because those words gave them power. Without them, they are left to sit with their own shadows, and many will not be able to bear it. Every explanation is an energy transaction. When given freely, it can be an offering, but when demanded, it becomes a theft. You must learn the difference. You are not obligated to make others comfortable with your evolution. Your boundary is not a courtroom that requires a defense. True maturity is saying, this is what I need, and letting that be the end of it. Not because you don't care, but because you care deeply about protecting your inner sanctum. When you stop explaining, you reclaim your mystery, and in mystery, there is power. So the next time you feel the impulse to justify your absence, your silence, or your boundary, pause. Ask yourself, am I explaining to connect or to be controlled? That answer will show you where your energy is leaking, and perhaps where it's time to let the silence speak for itself. The path back to yourself is not a straight line. It's a spiral, looping through memory, myth, and shadow. You will revisit old wounds, not to reopen them, but to retrieve the parts of you that were left behind. You will walk through silence, not because you are lost, but because the soul speaks most clearly in stillness. This is not the end of you. It is the shedding of who you are not. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." But now, you are waking up. You are no longer sleepwalking through the roles others wrote for you. You are remembering. And that remembrance is holy. Yes, it is painful, but so is birth, so is growth. The soul does not bloom without breaking, and in that breaking, there is beauty, there is truth, there is you, raw, radiant, and finally, real. So if life feels heavy right now, know that it's not because you are failing. It's because something deeper is rising. The real work isn't in becoming someone else. It's in unbecoming everything you are not. And when the dust settles, when the masks fall, when the noise fades, you will meet yourself again. And you will finally, deeply belong, not to the world, not to an identity, but to your soul.